Hi, I'm an improviser. I spent my entire life improvising, mostly in music, and mostly on this thing. It's a violin, an unusual instrument these days to be improvising on. Now, I believe, because of my experience with music, that improvisation is necessary for a better future. Now, we can't see into the future, but we can look to the past to see what has happened. Now, I want to let you know what happens when improvisation is allowed to flourish, especially coupled with skills, and when it is stifled. Now, when I was a boy of 8, I started playing the violin. And I might not have been the best violin student, maybe not the most talented, but I certainly was the most enthusiastic. I love music. I listen to music all the time. I wanted to be a great musician. I only listened to classical music. A little odd for a child of the 1970s. But when all my friends were listening to Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, I'm listening to Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart. So as soon as I had some skill on the instrument, I was able to make up my own music. It sounded like classical music because that is what I was listening to. The problem was, and still is today, that there was no outlet for this skill or talent. No want, no need. If there was a teacher who could help me with this, they wouldn't know how. And there were even some who discouraged it. Now that's really odd because we were studying composers like Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart who were fabulous improvisers. We know this because there's written accounts of these. Let me tell you about one. Now, Beethoven, when he could hear, he was a fabulous pianist. He was known in Vienna as the greatest pianist. So one day, another great pianist, his name was Steibel, Daniel Steibel. He was coming from Paris, and he wanted to take on Beethoven. Now, back in that time, they had these contests, these improvisation contests, and they were quite spectacles. They were sponsored by the aristocracy of the day. You had one prince and another prince. They would sponsor each musician. There would be betting going on. It would be held in a castle, a big party. I mean, this was the event. This was pretty awesome stuff. So this competition was set up, and it took place there in Vienna. Now, Steibel started. He had written a little motif, a little piece of music on a piece of paper, and he began to play that and then improvised on that. And it was quite good, very good, in fact. Now it was Beethoven's turn. Beethoven came to the piano, took that piece of music and turned it upside down. He began to play this slowly, and then began to build upon it in a storm of wonderful music. It was clear to everybody in the room who won this competition. In fact, Steibel is noted as storming out of the castle, exclaiming that he would never return to Vienna again unless Beethoven were gone. Well, he never returned to Vienna again. So the point is that Beethoven, who is this wonderful improviser, also created wonderful music, new music. He pushed the boundaries of music. In fact, that same piece that he created that day turned into the Eroica Symphony, Beethoven's Third Symphony, which was revolutionary at the time and pushed the bounds of music. So that's what happens when improvisation with skill is allowed to flourish. Now, for some reason, in classical music, that stopped. We stopped allowing the improvisation. It wasn't taught, wasn't demanded, wasn't needed at all. And what has happened is that music has stopped growing. New ideas have stopped coming into it. In consequence, it may even be dying because of that. Now, this can happen in any field as well. And why does this happen? There's many, many reasons, but one of them, I believe, is because we're afraid of making mistakes. When we improvise, we put ourselves out there, we run the risk of making a mistake. So as I got a little older, became a teenager, I did start listening to Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and all that great music, and blues especially. All that stuff was based in the blues, which had this great improvisation. It was built upon improvisation. And all this great music was created. And I started playing that as well. The problem is, even these days, rock and roll, for whatever reason, has stopped encouraging improvisation. It's almost non-existent. And in consequence, I believe it's dying. And that's what happens when you stop allowing improvisation into the picture. Now, how does that affect me? Most of you are students here at Harper College. How does it affect me? You're trying to decide what you're going to do for the rest of your life. What vocation will you be in? Well, I will tell you this. Computers cannot improvise. They cannot. From my experience in music, they cannot. We can write an algorithm to have them spit out random notes, sure, but that's not improv. There's an interaction, a human interaction between one and another that is necessary. And in the last 20 years, I've seen computers take over almost every part of my life and everybody else's life, and that's going to continue to happen. So if you want to find something to do where you cannot be replaced, then you have to have something that allows improvisation, because computers cannot do that. This can go also not only just into the work area, learning languages, and almost every aspect of life. Because, again, the computers are set to not make mistakes. That was the whole thing. We want to make mistakes because I learn much more from my mistakes than I ever do from my successes. When you introduce the unpredictable to the predictable, you have something entirely new. It's also exciting. It's not boring when you do the same thing over and over again. The repetitive thing, it can be very, very boring. Now, we have asked some of you, as you came in here, to write on a piece of paper a word, an adjective, a noun, something. I'm going to pick a couple of these out of this box here, and I'm going to create something entirely new on the violin here. A little scary. I'm not sure exactly what is going to happen. But when I pick these ideas out, they're going to go into my head, and I'm going to see what spontaneously happens from what you have suggested. It might be good. Might be meh. We'll see. But I'll tell you what, I'm excited to hear it. We have crowded, and we have Harper.